Today I want to show you a few quick tips and tricks in Premiere. The first thing that we're going to look at is where our footage is going to end up when we pull it from our source monitor down into our timeline. So I have a clip here and I've picked out a very small segment of it that I'd like to use. And if I drag it down into my timeline, you're going to see that the video goes into video track 1 and the audio goes into audio track 1. Well, that's a problem because if we do that, our audio is going to cover up our voiceover, and we want to keep our voiceover safe and secure. So the way that Premiere works is wherever this V1 is where the video track is going to be pulled into. Wherever the A1 is, that's where the audio track is going to be pulled into. So we need to move this A1 down to audio track 3, which is open. We have our music in audio track 2 and our voiceover in audio track 1, but audio track 3 is empty right now. So now if I pull down the clip, it's going to end up in video track 1 and audio track 3, and we're going to preserve this voiceover and our music. Now you might decide you don't need the audio from the clip up here anyway, so what you can do is just grab this film strip icon where it says drag video only when you hover over it. You can pull that down into the timeline, and then you don't get any audio at all, so you're not covering anything up. The next thing I want to look at is how you can scrub through footage quickly in your source monitor, especially with the slow motion footage. A lot of the athletics footage I gave you and some of the academic footage I gave you is in slow motion, and it takes a long time to watch it all the way through. I mean, this clip is 6 minutes and 27 seconds long, so I don't want to have to just play through this at normal speed. It's 5 times slow motion. So what I can do, remember, we can press L on our keyboard to play forward, and then if we press it multiple times, it's going to speed up. So I'm going to press through it, maybe 4 times, and then if I start to see something where it's like, oh, I might want to use this part of the clip, I'll just hit J to slow it down, and then I can see it more clearly. I can set my end point by hitting I on the keyboard, set my out point by hitting O on the keyboard, or if I want to keep scrubbing through, I can just hit L and L again and L one more time, and then we're going to speed it up. The other thing that you can do is you can just kind of speed it up by clicking on your playhead and literally scrubbing through the footage until you find a segment that you think you want to use. Some of this 4K footage might start to slow down your computer if you keep playing it back at full resolution. So what we can do is in our source monitor, we can play it back at 1/2 resolution, 1/4 resolution, or 1/8. And it's going to look a little bit blurry. It's not going to look great when you're playing it back at 1/8 resolution, but it's not changing the actual quality of the footage. When we put it into our timeline and then we export our video, it's going to export at full quality. Same thing with our program monitor. We can change that to whatever playback resolution that we want. This is just going to speed up our editing workflow by preventing our computer from lagging too much. Let's say I want to move these 3 clips down further into my timeline, but I don't want to move my voiceover and my music. So I'm going to grab my A tool, or I can click on Track Select Forward. And then when I click on this clip, you'll notice that everything gets selected, because it's selecting this clip right here that I clicked on, plus everything that happens after it, which is every other clip in the timeline. So one way to make sure that this doesn't happen, because we just want to move our footage, is we can lock down our audio channels, and now you'll see that all that's selected is our video track. Another thing I want to look at is any clips that come into your timeline and they look like this, it's because they were shot in HD. All of the slow motion footage that I gave you was shot in HD, and everything else is shot in 4K. So the HD footage doesn't fill up the entire frame. To fix that, we can just right click on our clip and say set to frame size. It's going to change the scale of the clip to 200%, which is going to make it look a little bit blurry by comparison to your 4K footage. But that's okay. We're going to export in HD. So this is going to essentially go back to 100%, and this is going to go to 50%, and everything's going to look nice and sharp. Let's go back over to our project window, and one thing that you can do to stay organized is you can set labels on your clips. So I can actually set a label on a clip in the timeline. Like if I want to remember that this clip is an athletics clip, for instance, I could right click on it, say label, and choose another color for it and say, okay, maybe forest is going to signify all of my clips that are athletics clips. To take this one step further, you could go into your folder structure and say, okay, everything that's lower school is going to be blue. So I'm going to select all of these clips in this lower school reading folder, right click and say label, and then make it blue. And then anytime that I pull one of these clips into my timeline, it's going to automatically be blue from the get-go. Another way to use this is to say, okay, I'm going through my footage and I think I want to use this clip eventually, but I don't know where yet. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to label it rows so that I notice this pink box over here is going to tell me, okay, that's a clip I want to go back to. So when I'm navigating through my project window, this will stand out as a clip that I think I want to go back to. Personally, the way that I like to set up footage I think I'm going to want to use later is to say, okay, I think I'm going to want to use roughly this segment of this clip. I don't know exactly where I'm going to use it yet, so I'm going to drag it down into my timeline to the right of where my music ends and say, okay, now I have this clip sitting here. I know I'm going to want to use it eventually, but I don't know when. When the time comes, I'll just go over here, I'll grab this clip, and I'll pull it into the correct position. And there's one more way that I sometimes like to organize, especially when I'm working with a really complicated project. I will right-click on a clip that I want to use and say New Sequence from Clip, and then I'll change the name of this to SEQ and either Prep, or I might even go as far as to say this is just going to be Prep for lower school footage. And then I'll pull this out of this folder and find my sequences folder and drop it into there so I can always find all of my sequences. And now I have this sequence here that is just going to have all of the clips that I want to use from lower school, but I don't know when I'm going to use them yet. And then when the time comes, I can kind of Control C to copy and then bring them into my timeline over here and say Control V to paste. And then I can just do the same thing where I'm pulling over clips where I want to use them when I want to use them. That's it for today. As always, let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.